You are tuned into a special episode of Municipal Focus. These series are a series of these programs are geared towards the candidates who are running for election in 2020 local elections, whether it's in Whitman or in Hanson. We are bringing them to you, and we're chatting with them about some of the essential issues and helping you to get to know them, especially during COVID-19, where candidates can't necessarily go out and meet and greet people and shake hands and learn more about the candidates face to face. This gives you an opportunity to get to know the candidates who are running for office. Joining us today is Rosemary Connolly. She is a candidate for the Board of Selectmen in Whitman. Welcome to the program, Rosemary.
Hi, Kevin. How are you?
I'm good. Yourself?
Great.
Good.
I mean, as could be.
As could be. For those who may be new to town politics, maybe new to the town of Whitman, or don't know you or follow politics that closely, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Okay, so somebody who just moved into town, right? They don't know me. I'm from Hanson originally. I moved away. When my father got sick, I moved back to the area with my children. As I entered the town, I started seeing things that, from an adult perspective, I had left in my teens and come back with children. And I had some questions on how we funded things. And I was involved with a group called NACA, and I was helping some people with foreclosures, and there were some other issues that came up about the values of people's homes. And I had approached the Democratic Committee. I'm a Democrat. And even though this is nonpartisan, I understand. And I wanted to participate in the local politics. There was an open on finance committee, and Mike Seeley had said, "Why don't you apply?" And I was accepted to be on our local finance committee. I've been on our finance committee for almost 3 years now. In that interim, I was nervous because it's a big responsibility to serve and, be in charge of people's money, allocate for how your money's spent. So I did a lot of research because I had never done municipal finance. I had done my own business finance, but not municipal. When I was learning this, one of the things that really stuck with me was use your demographics, fund for who lives there. And I really have been passionate about that, making sure that before we budget or do anything that I've got those demographics in front of us, we know who lives there, and we're interpreting what people might need. What percentage of our society is retired? What percentage of our society, work in the trades, and how many working families we have? While I was doing that process, I started to see that we were underfunding certain aspects of our community. And I brought up some questions that led to some of our financial, news right now. I decided to run because I want accountability to that. I want people to spend to the demographics. I feel as if we're holding on to people's checkbooks, and we're supposed to be writing checks for them. We're supposed to be considering how they can afford it and what they need. And I'm concerned that isn't happening. So I'm running my win is that even if people are held accountable, and if people won't be accountable, then I'll win by being electable. That's kind of where I'm at. So
okay, so I can because my next question was going to be, why are you deciding to run for selectman? But you kind of already answered that question. I think one of the biggest issues the town is facing is its finances, and this has been an ongoing issue for the past couple of years. Some folks may say this has been building up over the past several years. It depends on who you ask. And I know that the school budget, the school budget, and how each town is assessed, the method, is a major issue. For those who don't know, what is your understanding of the situation?
I was the one who brought it to the public, actually. 2 years ago, almost 2 years ago, I was investigating how we were spending money towards children. percentage of budget wise, we looked like we were doing okay, but we weren't having the per student amounts. And it looked like we had some schools that we weren't servicing as well, some of the town schools, which made it so that some children weren't having the same outcome. So I approached the schools with this, and somebody said, well, we pay the same amount per town. Well, I automatically knew it's done with what's called an aggregate wealth model, meaning that money is given to the state. We're all supposed to meet this one benchmark. No matter how much we can afford, we all are going to, the state will fill in the amount that we can't afford to bring us to what everybody in Massachusetts should have, an average education. And there should be only a certain amount of financial stress on every household from education. To not apply these laws means that we would divert money out of other departments or stress communities financially. So once I knew that Hanson was had a higher wealth index than Whitman, and we were paying the same amount, right away I said, hold on, there's a problem. So I started to dig into, where is that state aid going? At first I looked into the town, and I didn't know how it was entering the town. Remember, I was new to municipal finance at that point, and I looked into our own, how state aid was coming in, and I couldn't find it anywhere. I started asking around. I asked John Byers, a couple other people to work with me outside of finance committee. They had a lot of other issues to deal with, and we discovered it, or through that process, we discovered that it actually went right into the schools and that it wasn't being divided up correctly. Something apparently people knew, but were not forthcoming. I brought this to the attention of most of the people in the town hall, and they just played like they didn't know anything. It's disappointing to find out they did now. It's one of the reasons I'm running. And as you know, people are saying, oh, we didn't know anything. But if you look back and you look at language they use, I mean, minimal contribution is language from that law, Chapter 70 law. So it would be like somebody saying to a police officer when they pull you over, I didn't know that I could get a fine for speeding, but I was going 55 miles per hour. Like, well, aspects of the law, so it's hard to deny that you know the law. And I just feel as if people should be accountable, because both Hanson wasn't told that they were getting the money. They didn't volunteer to accept the money, and Whitman didn't volunteer to give the money. And there were people in the top of both of our towns that did this without knowing, and that's wrong to me, and that's not accountable. It now has put a stress on Hanson and a serious penalty on Whitman residents. I mean, thousands, $4 million just from the mismarking. And then if we go back many years from the beginning, there's never been a year that Hanson, from what we've found, that Hanson would have benefited from this, right? And if we think about this, if the towns were not regionalized, this would still be Whitman's money, and it would never be Hanson's money.
So let me ask you this. What are your concerns heading into town meeting, which is just a few short weeks? What are your concerns regarding the 2021 budget?
My concerns is that we won't be child-focused, that we will lose ourselves in a stand. It is wrong that we would have to pay more. It's wrong. But we can't force anybody to do something else. My concern is that, again, either the children will pay for this, as they have in years past, or our own staff, our own citizens. Because when we look at where that money came from to divert, we start to see that, our staff wasn't getting full COLAs, and, comparative to, Hanson Town employees, we don't have the same benefits as far as insurance goes. We haven't kept on maintenance of buildings. There's been some real problems, and this has had an impact, because if you read when the change of law happened in 2007, it's very clear we are changing this law so that it doesn't force towns to pull from other departments to pay for just this average education. And we're not talking about spectacular, we're talking about average. So I hope people can kind of find their way to both work a little harder than we have, and to be honest, move forward, consider how we spend to serve. Right now, Whitman citizens will be asked once again to spend money that they see no service from. Last year it was over $1 million, almost $1 million the year before. And we almost feel lucky to say, oh, almost 200,000. I personally feel as if Whitman citizens are kind, good people. If you've ever met them, if you even look at the demographics, the kinds of people, very giving people, they'll put kids first. But I don't think that should be exploited. I think there should be people in Hanson that recognize that as a kindness and don't exploit it.
Have you heard any talks of deregionalizing, any movement towards
Oh, I have.
regionalizing? And
I have.
are you for or against it?
It's ridiculous. It's the most ridiculous thing. Well, first of all, this is another game. This is the same group of people that perpetuated this. You really won't see any benefit. Like, the only time I'll be afraid is when Whitman starts to talk deregionalizing. There's so much benefit to Hanson, and Hanson officials are going to rile people up to the point in which they will talk deregionalizing, and it's going to cost them. Now, keep in mind, I'm from Hanson. I have a parent now in Hanson. I moved back to help care for my father. So I care what happens to Hanson residents, but I still have a duty to Whitman residents. And I think I've asked from the beginning for honest conversations. And if I were going to say honest conversations, we would start with the fact that Hanson cannot afford that they would still not have access to that same state aid they're want to deregionalizing for, right? They're threatening to deregionalizing. That money won't be there because it was never theirs. Additionally, they receive 80% of their busing paid for it, where Whitman pays what, 30-35%. We're not really split. We don't have that resource equally either. So they're going to lose 80% of their busing. They're going to lose all of that hold harmless. And when we start to look at cost of scale, and I keep pointing to, and I hope that people start to read this, the regional school audit from Suzanne Baum's office. It is such a valuable piece of material because it talks about cost of scale, and that we don't even begin to see the benefit of cost of scale until we see schools that are above, 1,500 students. It's between 1,500 to 3,000. Well, neither town has over 3,000. And the state's going to want to see a responsible financial plan moving forward. I don't know how either town would supply that without paying almost double what they pay now. So if you're talking deregionalizing out of spite or out of force people to do something, that's not honest negotiations. That's not honestly interacting. We want to be partners, and we should be honoring each other. Right now, Whitman is within Whitman. We're upset, but we're saying, kids are first, and we're hoping that Hanson citizens see that this whole process has hurt children. It's been set up that our whole educational financial system has been based on what the poor town or the poorer of the two towns can afford when you remove their state aid to support their ability to afford schools. So each town has been paying to the lowest common denominator for many, many years, this whole time. That's hurt how we can invest in schools, and it's made it so only one town is accountable and the other town isn't. And that's the honest conversations that we need to have. How do we spend money to properly service community members in both towns? And I think I'd be best for that. I mean, I was the person that said, we're not going to overspend $4 million if it's not going to be effective. It's not effective. I also have to be responsible for other towns, other members in town. We have elderly that need to be cared for. We have a large retired community. Money has to be allocated to who lives there,
Let's move away from finances. I understand that it's
all I am.
It's a major issue. But what are some of the other issues? What are some of the other issues? And they don't have to be, type A or type B issues. It could be something that you've been hearing from residents over the past few months that you're like, you know what, this is something I'd like to tackle if I get elected in June.
I would like to tackle something that has gotten me upset personally since I've been involved in Whitman politics, and that's the lack of true democracy. We have a very split party. We have Democrats, Republicans, and we lose our common citizenship, and we lose each other's voices. What I'd like to see is more democracy. I would like to see people, not a small group of people, making all the decisions. I'd like to hear more voices in the process. I'd like to strengthen our finance committee's position in the conversation and have that equal dialogue. Commonly, it's really just put our town administrator is dictating, well, in many ways, our selectmen and our finance committee. When I first got on finance committee, we weren't, I know back to finance, but we weren't even advocated to use the state regulations in which we, where we look at how we set the levy, how we do everything. And as a result, I believe that we haven't properly collected to the levy. We haven't collected our new growth. We've left millions on the table. And that, to me, is bad because it creates an erratic financial situation. And I'm back again, because I'm very much about finances, where we can't tax in a way that's consistent. We're always going to be afraid for an override. We want to make sure that finances are consistent. We have too many retired people in this town. We want to make sure they're predictable to the best that we can. Of course, this is all, things happen, but to the best that we can. And I feel like some of the moves that we've made are against those state regulations, all the way down to the school assessment. These are against these state, best practices. And I know I sound like Sean Kane, but he's right. I want to apply those so that they service people. I want to be in service to people. I don't, and be their ear, voice, and, monitor how these things are being applied.
What are some of the needs of the town? And it could be whether it's more police officers, more firefighters. It could be a capital project. What do you feel are some of the bigger needs that you'd like to help champion if you're elected?
Oh boy. I'm going to talk about it in terms of demographics, right?
Okay.
And it all boils down to demographics. What are the needs boils down to who lives there. If you were to talk about the two most underserved demographics, would be our two largest demographics. Working families and the elderly are the two most underserved demographics, which is kind of strange because we're very heavy on both. I'd like to see more services to support the elderly. I'd like to continue our ambulance. I think it's smart, considering how many elderly we do have. I think it would be irresponsible to remove our ambulance. I'd like to see more services to support families in the summertime. We're looking at our demographics again, and we look at employment. How are people employed in Whitman? Well, we have many people that are working in the trades, and those people are working most of those summers. I mean, that's where their heavy work is. And to have no programs or few programs to help them with the care of their children, I think is irresponsible. We're not using their money to serve them. That would be two of the things.
Okay. Would you participate in a candidates forum? And I ask you this because prior to COVID-19, anytime that we've done political forums that I've been involved, more times than not, everybody's in the same room. But because of COVID-19, that could challenge our time, our ability to have everybody in the same arena to be able to kind of discuss the issues. So it might end up coming down to being something remote. Would you participate in a political forum like that?
I would.
Okay. Is there any other item that we didn't have a chance to talk about, but you'd like to take a few minutes to discuss, other than talking about talking finances, the school assessment method, any of that stuff, is there another issue that might be you know, that you feel is paramount to the town of Whitman?
Yeah, there are a few. I mean, Whitman is complex and Whitman is beautiful. We've talked a little bit about trying to bring businesses here. Um, what are the, doing a SWOT analysis on this and determining how do we support the businesses that are here and how do we bring more business in to support our community. Very symbiotic. I would again go back to finance because I do like it and I'm good at it. I would want to ensure that how we raise taxes, how we pay reflects honorably on the people that live there, and it considers them, and the people that work here. It considers them, how we negotiate, that we do all of this in good faith. I would want to ensure that we are accountable to both people that work with us and people that we serve.
I have to ask you this, knowing with the whole pandemic that we've been dealing with, the town of Whitman financially has been hurt. I know that, it's one of those communities that bought into the meals tax, and, part of those monies the town can use in its general fund. And last I heard, it was a little over $1 million lost. I mean, how do you, when you look forward and knowing that you got a town meeting coming up, are you not concerned as a resident that you might end up deciding to go with a 1/12 budget because that's the best way to go for now?
I think one of the things about Whitman citizens is that we've always, despite everything, we've always done everything we can to make sure children come first. Whether we've earned that title or not, in the end, when we go back and we look at the situation, and that's honorable. We have adults that care about our children, that care about our community. I am nervous because that, with all of these kids have been set back so much that you don't want to compound damage. I'm also nervous for the health and well-being of many of our elderly citizens. We have such a large elderly demographic. There's a lot to be considered here. There's a lot to take in, and I'm part of a democracy. And in the end, the voters decide. My job is essentially to ensure that they have all of the decisions, and we collectively make that choice in the end and present what I believe is the best choice to protect and create a healthy growth environment for everybody involved in this community. I intend to do that with it and confront these challenges.
So probably my final question I would ask you, let's say you are elected, what would you like to accomplish if you are elected on? Do you have already in your head a punch list of things that you'd like to accomplish as an elected member of a board like the Board of Selectmen?
Oh, yes. Like I said, providing that consistent financial taxes that people can count on to the best of my ability, that they know what's coming, that there's no surprises when they open up their tax bill. Making sure that people have a true voice in things, that information is not presented in a way that's slanted, that they have all their choices in front, that we create that true democracy where everybody's voices are heard and we make these decisions together. That would be a primary. I want to also just mention that when we have such a large group of people in the trades or retired, so these are community, we have a community that can't handle those quick changes in their finances, right? When we have this large group of people that are primarily working in the summer, and then in the winter, money goes dry or they're using savings, and we have these changes in taxation or assessments or whatever, it's hard for them. And I want to ensure that we can do our best to understand their circumstances and make our choices to ease that.
And if folks want to follow your campaign for selectmen, how do they do that?
Oh, I have to be honest, because I'm on finance and it's been crazy this year, and I do a lot of research beyond this with another group, to make sure that we have that real information out there, that we're getting different voices in. I haven't done a ton with my campaign. Shame on me, but I will be this week, because a lot of this is wrapping up, and so I will be putting out there on Facebook. You'll see me. It'll be Connolly for selectmen, or Rosemary Connolly for selectmen. I've got to grab that and do that this week. I have a group that keeps bugging me, and I'll get that out. I want to just bring up, I would have been fighting to prevent money from going over and trying to identify that. And I'm somebody that won't shut up when I see the citizens of Whitman being taken advantage of. I will ensure that you're treated fairly, correctly, and that you are making the decisions and others are not making decisions for you in the end. And I ask for your vote. I do. I ask for your vote because I want to serve you.
Thank you very much, Rosemary.
Thank you.
You got it. And thank you very much for tuning in to this episode of Municipal Focus. Again, the idea of these series of shows, whether they are shows for Hanson or Whitman, whether selectmen, school committee, we will do our best to get the candidates on camera and discuss some of the issues. So we thank you for tuning in. Until next time, be safe and have a good day.